everybody, and welcome to my review of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, a new CG animated film from Sony Animation Studios. So this is a little bit of a different kind of a Spider-Man film, in as much as, even though Peter Parker is featured in the film, he is not the primary protagonist. We've got Miles Morales, who is a African-American, Puerto Rican Spider-Man, and in the comic books, I think it was around 2011, he became Spider-Man after Peter Parker died, because, you know, a lot of the main comic characters, Batman, Superman, they've all died in the past, but you know, they come back. So in this film, we've got the Kingpin, who's trying to bring his wife and kid back through from another dimension into this big portal, but inadvertently brings all these spider characters into our universe, such as Spider-Ham and Spider-Man Noir and Spider-Gwen and all these spider people. And in the meantime, Miles Morales has to come to terms with becoming Spider-Man and learning about his power and stuff. And not only that, this film has a whole bunch of really good themes to it. First and foremost being that it doesn't matter who is behind the Spider-Man costume. It's about, you know, what we do to do the right thing. And I think it's a really cool message, because Spider-Man was always one of these characters that could be anybody. I mean, let's face it, like, you know, kids of color or different ethnicities and stuff, you know, that's maybe a little bit trickier to relate to Bruce Wayne, who is a huge white guy, whereas, you know, Spider-Man was always covered over. And so, yeah, this film, it's all about not who is in the costume, but just the fact that they're being everything that they can be to live to their true potential. So Into the Spider-Verse was directed by a handful of people who I hadn't really heard of before, but two of the names I did recognize on the production team were Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who were responsible for things such as the Lego Movie, 21 and 22 Jump Street, and almost Solo, the Star Wars movie thing that Ron Howard ended up doing and was okay. So I'm going to come right out and say it. I wasn't really that looking forward to this film. I know a lot of people were, but I wasn't. Look, I'm a traditionalist, you know. I've got no objections to a new character taking over as Spider-Man, but like, I grew up with Peter Parker. Like, he was always my Spider-Man, and so that was, in all honesty, kind of something that did make me kind of think, am I really going to like this version? And aside from that, I saw like an extended trailer, or well, pretty much like an entire scene from the film at a theater recently, and I was really put off by the frame rate in this film, because all the characters, it's almost like they're in stop motion, like there's this really low frame rate going on, whereas all the backgrounds and everything are normal. So that didn't sit well with me. I mean, honestly, I was kind of thinking, like, is there something wrong with the projector here or something like that? But then the reviews of this thing came out, and holy crap, this thing had like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and everyone's raving about it. And so I thought, okay, well, you know, I'll check it out. I like cartoons. And oh my god, I am so glad I went and saw it, because holy shit, this movie is freaking awesome. It goes for almost 2 hours. Like, it's a really good length film, but man, I'm still, like, I saw it a couple of days ago, I'm still processing what I saw. This thing, okay, it's not often that you can actually use the word revolutionary to describe a film. I mean, we live in a world these days where it's really hard to come up with something original in movies. This movie, wow, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. It is a visual art masterpiece. And you know, like, sometimes when comic book movies come out and, you know, if it's a really good one, the critics often use this phrase, you know, oh, it's just like the comic book has jumped off the page and onto the screen, which I think realistically, in my opinion, I think only Robert Rodriguez's Sin City films have ever really managed to do that. Well, yeah, put everything aside, this is the benchmark movie for comic books leaping off the page, because this film has been designed to be a living, breathing comic book. Even in as much as, like, the textures that you see on screen. You know, like, back in the early days, like, you know, kind of maybe predominantly around the 70s, 80s, a lot of comic books were printed with this sort of halftone effect, like you can see right here, where the colors were made up of individual little dots, and there was also more techniques like offset printing, where sometimes you would actually get kind of two images that were a little blurred together, almost like when you see the red and blue 3D effect on things, so the picture's a little blurry. So this film replicated a lot of those kind of styles in it, which I really dug. And not only that, you had, you know, in certain scenes where people are thinking, like you had sort of caption things on the screen or sound effects and stuff. I mean, this really was a comic book brought to life. It was extraordinary, and the whole thing was just so fast-paced and full of bright colors and shapes, and just it was extraordinary. In terms of the story, I thought it was brilliant. Miles Morales is a great character. Yeah, so we've got Peter Parker in it. I think he's 26 years old. This is like 10 years after the traditional story of Spider-Man. And I loved Miles's backstory and who he was, and yeah, his relationship with his parents and his uncle and all these sort of things. Like, he was a really deep character. I loved all the inclusion of all the different spider characters. They all worked so well because they were all really different characters. You know, you weren't just sort of lumped with a whole bunch of the same sort of dynamics. So yeah, that worked really well as well. There was a lot of humor in this film. Overall, it was really hard to fault. The only thing that really did stick out for me, and it was like what I saw in that extended scene that I saw that time, yeah, that choppy animation of the characters, I didn't like it one little bit. It's not even the sort of thing I can kind of say, well, yeah, it grew on me after a while. Nah, it was distracting. And I don't know why they did it. It didn't really feel to me like it added to the living comic book effect at all. And yeah, it just really grated on my nerves from start to finish. Especially, like I said, when we had all the backgrounds and everything else going on that was nice and smooth, and then you got these choppy characters, and yeah, that didn't work for me. And look, there's a few other little things here and there that I could pick on, like the fact that Miles Morales is struggling to learn who he is as Spider-Man, and then, you know, right when he needs to be, boom, he's in action and stuff like that. But essentially, this was a kid's film, so it's kind of hard to, you know, be a bit harsh on those kind of things. And I have to mention, please stay till after the credits, because there is one of the greatest end credits scenes of all time. Remember how in Deadpool 2, arguably the funniest scene in the movie, they left till the end? This is no exception. The end credits scene in this movie is fantastic. They also had a really touching tribute to Stan Lee at the end of this, because he did have a voice cameo in this film. I believe it was the last one that he recorded. I know that there are ones that he's filmed for the MCU, but I think I read somewhere this was the last one that he did. So yeah, there was a really touching tribute at the end. But yeah, look, the choppy animation aside, I had a blast watching this film. I cannot wait to get it on Blu-ray. It's definitely the kind of film you can watch over and over again. I had a hell of a lot of fun with it, and I'm going to give Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse a 9 out of 10. So I know that a whole bunch of people have seen this movie already. I think it's actually being released this week. So yeah, make sure you go and check it out. Take your kids, they're going to have a great time. And in the meantime, if you have seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I would love to know what you thought, because, well, look, I know you loved it. But go ahead and tell me what you thought of it anyway. Drop me some comments either here or Facebook or Twitter. All the social media links are in the description below, because I like to talk about movies, and I would love to talk about movies with you. Catch you next time.
Click subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest movie reviews. Skynet will be taking over any day now, so what have you got to lose? Nyah.